Hi, and welcome to DrupalBrief. This is an AI-generated summary of another video, podcast, or blog post. If you want to learn more about what's being discussed here, then please go check out the source. This podcast is produced by the team at DrupalForge. DrupalForge is the new #1 open-source development and hosting platform. It has all the functionality of the expensive platforms, but at very affordable prices. If you're looking for a new hosting provider, contact us for a demo before you get locked in. Okay, that's it. Make sure to click subscribe, and here we go.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're jumping straight into some fascinating source material you shared with us. A conversation from the Talking Drupal Deep Dive, episode 504, The Marketplace.
That's right. And our mission here, for this deep dive is to really pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight from what they discussed. We're focusing on two key things they covered. One, a community module that sounds, incredibly practical.
Okay.
And two, a much bigger kind of strategic initiative looking at Drupal's future, its sustainability and growth.
Exactly. You wanted to get the crucial takeaways from that chat, and, we're here to help you unpack them. Let's get started.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's unpack this first bit. The episode kicked off with their module of the week, right?
Yep.
And the one they highlighted, it definitely grabbed my attention. Honestly, it sounded a little wild. Views CSV Source.
Wild is definitely one word for it. The name pretty much sums up its core function. It lets you build a Drupal view that pulls data directly from a CSV file. And the really crucial part is you don't import that data into Drupal's database first. The CSV is the source. It completely bypasses the standard Drupal data way of doing things.
No, so it's like creating a live report based on a spreadsheet file. That does open up some interesting possibilities, yeah. What were some of the key features they pointed out?
They ran through quite a few. You can point the view to a CSV file that's just sitting on your site's file system.
Right.
Or it could be hosted somewhere else remotely.
Okay, remote files. What about security then?
Yeah, they thought of that. If the remote file needs security, it supports authentication. It can even encode credentials and headers, which is a pretty smart detail.
Okay, yes. Security for remote stuff is definitely essential.
Yeah.
What about actually, working with the data once you've pointed to the file? How does that work?
Well, you map the CSV columns to fields in your view, just like you normally would.
Standard view stuff.
Pretty much. It also includes a group by function, which is useful if you're maybe building charts or doing some aggregation.
Right.
And for filtering.
Okay.
Besides the standard text filters you'd expect, it has this really neat thing called a CSV field options filter. It automatically generates a drop-down filter.
Wait, from the CSV data itself?
Yeah, showing all the unique values from whatever CSV column you pick.
That's genuinely slick. That makes it much easier to use.
Yeah.
And you could display the data in tables or charts like normal views.
Exactly. Standard views displays work fine. And they mention it plays nicely with other contributed modules too, like View Simple Math Field was one example. It comes with its own and contextual filter plugins as well, so it feels quite, native within the whole Views setup.
That level of integration sounds pretty impressive, especially for a module doing something so fundamentally different from how Drupal usually handles data.
Yeah.
Who built this? And is it, mature, stable?
It's actually quite new. Created in March 2024 by Daniel Corin and Neacat. It's already at a version 0.11, and it works with Drupal 8 all the way up to 11.
Wow, okay.
And according to the source, it's actively maintained. The latest release was just last month. It has security coverage tests, good documentation in the README.
That's good.
Yeah, and when they recorded, it only had 4 open issues, and apparently none were actual bugs, which is pretty good for a new module doing something complex.
Yeah, really good. How many sites are using it?
Officially listed as 56 sites.
Okay, so that quick uptake and low issue count for something so new.
Yeah.
That's notable. You mentioned the host had that sort of amazing and terrifying reaction.
They absolutely did. And the terrifying part, that immediately made sense to me. It comes from that shared pain,
Oh, yeah.
Watching tools like Excel or Google Sheets just randomly mangle CSV files when you open or save them.
Oh, yes. The spreadsheet trauma is real.
Totally. It really highlights that this module is only going to be as good as the cleanliness of your source CSV data. The source did bring that up. Cleaner CSVs are obviously better. But they also talk about maybe some interesting workarounds, like potentially using a flat URL directly from a Google Sheet, assuming you can keep that clean.
Yeah, a Google Sheet link. That could be a lifesaver for some clients who are comfortable in that world. What about practical uses? What did they brainstorm?
They saw it being really good for internal tools, like simple dashboards based on data someone keeps in a spreadsheet.
Makes sense.
Maybe an intermediate step before you load data into something heavier like Tableau.
Okay.
And crucially, they saw a huge benefit for clients who have data kind of locked away in external systems or maybe legacy systems that don't have easy APIs.
Ah, right. Instead of a painful import.
Exactly. This lets you display that data right in Drupal without building complex syncs or doing a massive import job. They also mentioned using it to provide the raw data table alongside a chart for accessibility reasons.
That's a good point. The source also touched on whether this approach is like easier or harder than the traditional way, maybe migrating data into a custom Drupal table.
Right. So for a site builder, setting this up might actually feel more complex than just doing a simple one-time migration into Drupal.
Huh.
But from the perspective of the module developers, building this one generic module is probably easier than developers writing custom code every single time someone needs to pull in dynamic data from some random flat file somewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. Scale.
And they highlighted a potential performance benefit too, which was surprising.
Oh.
For really large data sets, just reading a flat CSV file using PHP could actually be faster than going through all of Drupal's database layers and entity loading for every single row.
Huh. Faster than the database in some cases.
Interesting.
And they mentioned seeing it demoed.
Yeah, I got a shout out. Apparently there was a lightning talk demo at MidCamp, which kind of further validates that it's a real thing people are using.
Okay. So, Views CSV Source sounds like a powerful, maybe slightly scary, but definitely useful tool for those specific situations where you need to show external CSV data dynamically in Drupal views.
Yep, sums it up well.
Okay, so that module is a really neat technical solution. But let's pivot now to the other major topic from that source. This one feels much bigger, really addressing the health and future of the whole Drupal ecosystem.
Yeah.
Let's turn our attention to the idea behind the Drupal Marketplace initiative.
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really interesting and complex. The fundamental, simple idea at its core is to create a trusted place.
On Drupal.org.
At Drupal.org, yeah.
Right.
For contributors to offer high-quality, ready-to-launch Drupal site templates.
They were quite careful about defining site templates, weren't they? It's important people don't just think themes or distributions like we used to have.
Absolute critical distinction. They describe them as starter kits.
Starter kits, okay.
Yeah. Think of them as composer templates that bundle up, well, basically everything you need for a specific type of site.
Like what?
An experience builder theme, the Drupal CMS itself, plus pre-configured recipes, maybe some demo content.
Oh, okay.
The key difference they stressed is they're designed for one-time use, to get you started quickly. Like a pre-built foundation you then build upon and customize.
Right. Not something you update like a distro.
Exactly. It's definitely positioned as something more, or maybe different than just a theme.
So what's the driving force? Why is this initiative seen as so important for Drupal's future?
There are several big reasons, really. First, and this is maybe the most critical one, it's about significantly lowering the barrier to entry for new users.
Making it easier to get started.
Yeah. The goal is to let people get started fast, build sites with confidence, without needing, deep Drupal expertise right out of the gate.
Okay.
It also aims to reduce complexity and maybe cost for agencies who build these kinds of sites repeatedly.
Right.
And a key part is giving contributors a clear channel, a way to showcase their work and potentially monetize it.
That monetization piece is interesting. And this connects directly to the Starshot leadership team's goals, doesn't it? Making Drupal easier to adopt is pretty fundamental to Starshot.
It absolutely does. And it aligns perfectly with the Drupal Association's interests, too. The DA funds the infrastructure for Drupal.org.
Right, the hosting the servers?
Yeah, and the source mentioned that hosting Drupal.org costs something like $10 per active Drupal site globally per year. That adds up fast.
Wow, okay.
So this initiative is looking for these mutual wins, things that can help support the infrastructure, make it more self-supporting. It even ties into that broader global conversation about funding digital public infrastructure. Apparently that was even discussed at the UN recently.
Okay, so it's a pretty significant strategic direction. How are they actually going about exploring if this is even feasible? Like just jumping in, right?
No, definitely not. There is a dedicated marketplace working group. It's led by Tiffany Farriss, who was the guest on the Talking Drupal episode. And their specific job, their charter, is to conduct really deep research into how a marketplace could actually work.
Socially, technically.
All of it,
Yeah.
socially, technically, financially. Before making a firm commitment, it's all about getting to a data-informed go or no-go decision.
That sounds like a smart, cautious approach. What kind of research are they doing? Sounds like a lot.
It is extensive. They're running surveys. They're using these weekly Slack prompts to get sort of raw, candid community opinions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, doing competitive analysis of other marketplaces, consulting with IP lawyers, pulling in feedback through tons of different channels. They're actively trying to draft potential governance structures, quality standards for these templates, contributor workflows, exploring various business models. It's a lot.
The Slack prompts sound like a really great way to get direct feedback on specific, tricky issues. Can you give an example of one?
Yeah, they're using the hashtag DrupalCM's marketplace channel on Drupal Slack. A perfect example prompt they shared was something like, what makes a site template worth paying a premium for, despite the fact that it's GPL and one-time use?
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. That prompt gets right to the absolute heart of the challenge, doesn't it? Dealing with the GPL implications.
Exactly.
So what has the community reaction been like overall? And what are the main obstacles or challenges they're navigating?
Well, it's definitely seen as a big potential change, a really big one. And the technical aspects, building the thing, while they're complex, they're often seen as maybe less challenging than figuring out the what and the how. The social and structural pieces.
Right.
It touches on so many existing tensions within the open source world,
Trying to get everyone aligned, contributors, agencies, users, the DA, must be incredibly difficult. Sounds like herding cats.
It was absolutely described as a cat herding challenge. You've got all these stakeholders with potentially very different goals. Well, contributors might want revenue or recognition. Agencies might want lower costs or a platform for visibility, lead gen. And users just want an easy, trustworthy way to get started. And the Drupal Association is focused on the long-term health and stewardship of the platform. Plus, there's the challenge of resetting mental models. People hear marketplace and immediately think themes or maybe distros from the past. They need to understand this newer concept of site templates, which is itself still kind of evolving as they define it.
Aligning people around something still in development. Tricky.
Very.
And you mentioned the GPL constraints again. How does the fact that Drupal is GPL licensed fundamentally impact this whole marketplace idea?
Yeah, the GPL license is just foundational to Drupal. It guarantees the code can be freely distributed, modified, shared, redistributed, all of that.
So you can't really sell the code.
Exactly. This forces the initiative to think very carefully about what exactly someone would be paying for in this marketplace context. Why pay a premium for something that's ultimately free code? The source really highlighted that the value proposition has to come from something else.
Like what? The convenience, the vetting.
Potentially. Things like the curation, the trust signal you get because it's on Drupal.org, maybe a simplified installation process, maybe even some kind of indirect support baked into the model somehow. That seems to be the direction they're exploring.
Okay, so the product isn't just the code bundle, but the verified quality, the convenience, the trust factor.
Precisely. That seems to be the key idea they're exploring to navigate the GPL issue. But this also leads directly to another major concern they talked about, the fear of, enshittification.
That's a strong term. What does that mean here?
It is strong, but it reflects a valid concern, I think. It's based on watching how other digital platforms, maybe some app stores or marketplaces, have evolved over time. The fear is that if you start optimizing primarily for monetization, you could potentially erode the trust and the quality of the experience. You might undermine the very open source values that make Drupal strong in the first place.
Right, maintaining that balance.
Exactly. The community wants to ensure that any marketplace model sustains those values, doesn't compromise them. This isn't just a tech or product problem. It's a really deep cultural and structural challenge for the community to grapple with.
Hey, I have a quick question for you. Are you happy with your current hosting? If you are, then good. Stay with them. But if you're looking, then listen up. Did you know that Drupal Forge now offers affordable hosting? For single sites with unlimited dev and stage environments, you can get all the features of the expensive platforms for less than $20 per month. If you have multiple production sites, you can get a cluster for less than $200 per month and host as many production sites as you want. Contact us for a demo before you get locked in. Okay, that's it. Back to the show.
Yeah, I can see that. A big concern I heard mentioned in the source was about the potential for increased burden on module maintainers. If a marketplace drives way more usage of their modules, what happens?
That's a really important point, yeah. And it's absolutely acknowledged by the working group. More sites using a module will likely lead to more activity, more support requests, more pressure in the issue queues.
And maybe different expectations if money changes hands somewhere.
Potentially. There's that social dynamic, too, in a context where maybe someone paid for a template that uses a module. Users might feel more entitled to demand support. It might feel more like somebody's job to complain when things aren't perfect, which puts pressure on volunteer maintainers.
Yeah, nobody wants to drown maintainers. How might they mitigate that? What ideas are they discussing?
Well, they talked about the idea of layers. Maybe the creator of the site template acts as a kind of first line of support or a filter between the end user and the individual module maintainers.
Okay, that could help.
Potential financial solutions were also brought up, like maybe some revenue from the marketplace could flow into a general fund, like a module innovation fund or a sustainability fund, rather than trying to directly pay individual maintainers for including their specific modules.
Interesting.
They also mentioned supporting those foundational projects Drupal relies on, like DDEV or PHP or Twig, as part of a broader sustainability picture.
Framing the potential increase in burden as a great problem to have if it comes from success.
Yeah.
That's pragmatic, but you still need solutions, right?
You absolutely do. The idea is if success does increase the burden, then hopefully the resources generated by that success could be channeled to help address those very issues. It forces a really necessary conversation, I think, about the true costs, human, technical, financial, of growth and sustainability in open source. They even talked about trying to establish some kind of baseline for what typical module burden looks like now, so they could actually monitor the impact if a marketplace launches and see if resources need to be redirected.
That's smart, being proactive. They also seemed very open about the risk of failure with this initiative. What does failure look like here, and how are they trying to minimize that risk?
Yeah, they're definitely aware of the risks. They pointed out that while other parts of the Starshot process, like recipes or the template building ideas, have probably been beneficial even if they don't get massive adoption.
Right, the process itself was useful.
Exactly. But a marketplace, especially one that might involve payment down the line, could be much more divisive if it fails. It might be harder to just walk back from.
So how do they avoid that?
Their approach is guided by what they called a consent model. Basically, asking the community at each stage, is this version of the plan good enough for now, and is it safe enough to try?
So small, careful steps, getting buy-in along the way.
Exactly. It's all about identifying the critical assumptions and the potential risks at every single stage and trying to mitigate them before moving forward. The MVP phase, the first real version, is specifically designed to be small and contained.
So if it doesn't work out,
the failure isn't catastrophic for the community or for Drupal.org.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What is their specific MVP goal then? And what's the timeline?
Okay, the MVP goal is really about defining a trusted, credible process for submitting and reviewing these site templates.
Okay.
Validating that the marketplace concept actually delivers real value, to users, to contributors, to the ecosystem, establishing some lightweight but credible governance and maybe an initial funding model, and ultimately gaining enough confidence from the ecosystem to move forward.
And the timeline? The
timeline they mention is aiming to have a clear point of view on what this marketplace could be, ready by DrupalCon Vienna.
Which is in October.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What might that MVP actually look like? Is it just like a simple page on Drupal.org?
That's part of what they're figuring out for the potential MVP shape. It could be a page on Drupal.org outlining the process. They're debating this submission and review process itself, how much should be manual versus automated review. What are the key dimensions they're actually reviewing against? They need to identify what the trust signals will be. Things like usage stats, maybe user reviews, badges, maybe some kind of self-certification process for contributors.
Okay.
Clear attribution is important too. Who made the template? What modules and recipes does it use? And some kind of basic review and appeals process needs to be there.
In the money part. Will people be paying for templates in this first MVP?
Probably not. Monetization might not be included in the very first MVP round.
Why not?
It just adds a significant layer of complexity. You suddenly need customer service, refunds, tax handling, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's definitely being researched as part of the potential business model for later phases. They did mention there are currently 3 pilot site templates being built right now.
No.
And those will serve as a kind of sandbox, a place to test out the submission, review, and potential distribution processes. The whole approach is meant to be agile. Take small steps, see what happens, learn from it, inspect, adapt. And the working group's focus right now is specifically on getting to that go or no-go decision for this phase, not speculating too far beyond that yet.
It sounds like a massive amount of work, truly.
Yeah.
And a lot of community engagement needed. So how can you, the listener, get involved? How can you share your perspective on all this?
Yeah, there are multiple ways, and they really do emphasize that community input is valuable as they navigate all these complexities.
Okay, like what?
You can stay informed by reading the shareouts they post. Those go up on Planet Drupal and LinkedIn. The central hub for all the information is the initiative page on Drupal.org itself.
Do you have the URL?
Yeah, it's Drupal.org about Starshop Marketplace Initiative. That page has links to the surveys, past shareouts, the discussion prompts, summaries, basically everything. Probably the most direct way to engage, though, is in the dedicated Slack channel. That's hashtag DrupalCMS Marketplace in the main Drupal Slack. Look for those weekly prompts they post, and you can read the summaries of the community discussions that follow.
The surveys sound like a maybe quicker way to give feedback if you don't have time for, deep Slack discussions.
Definitely. The surveys apparently typically only take about 10 minutes, but they're really crucial for the working group to kind of gauge the community's temperature on different issues and gather specific input.
Okay.
You can also join their real-time collaboration sessions. They call them RTCS. Just check the initiative page or the Slack channel for the schedule for those.
And what if someone is more active in the community already, maybe goes to camps or cons?
Well, you can become an outreach coordinator or just a volunteer helping spread the word. There's another Slack channel for that, hashtag Marketplace Volunteers. In there, they share materials like introduction decks or survey share-out slides that you could potentially use to amplify the message or discuss the initiative at local meetups or bigger events. They also spent some time talking about the value proposition, or again, for different groups. For agencies, for instance, lead generation seems to be seen as maybe the most significant initial benefit. It's a way for an agency to showcase their particular approach or expertise by offering a template.
And attract clients who like that approach.
Exactly. It's maybe less about creating a whole new core business model selling templates and more about visibility and attracting the right kind of client work.
Okay. And for new users just getting started with Drupal?
For them, the hope is it provides a much gentler on-ramp. It gets them started without necessarily reducing Drupal's underlying power or complexity, which they might need later.
Right.
It helps them get a head start and hopefully learn how to do Drupal well from a solid foundation, knowing they can grow into the more advanced features when they're ready.
And what about for agencies who might take over a site that was originally built using one of these templates?
Yeah, that's another potential benefit. It could create a baseline of trust.
How so?
Well, the agency taking over could be more confident that the site wasn't just built poorly from scratch by someone inexperienced. It might help avoid those really frustrating, look, we just need to scrap this and start over conversations. So yeah, it really is aimed at providing benefits across the ecosystem, trying to address multiple pain points simultaneously.
It sounds like an incredibly complex, but potentially transformative initiative for Drupal's future health and growth. A lot to consider.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Navigating all those pieces, the social, the technical, the financial, all under that GPL constraint, it's a huge undertaking.
Okay, so just to quickly recap what we pulled from the source for you. First, there was Views CSV Source. That's that clever, maybe slightly scary module allowing you to display CSV data directly in Views without a database import. Offers flexibility, but brings those classic spreadsheet data challenges.
Right. Useful in specific cases.
And then the main event, the Drupal Marketplace Initiative. This major strategic effort exploring a trusted hub on Drupal.org for high-quality site templates. There's a dedicated working group doing deep research right now to decide if it's feasible. They're tackling huge challenges, the GPL license, aligning all the different stakeholders with different goals, addressing valid fears about enshittification, planning how to manage potential increased burden on module maintainers.
Yeah.
And they're doing it all through this agile risk mitigating process, aiming for that initial go-no-go point of view by DrupalCon Vienna in October.
And they are actively, constantly asking the community, asking you for help and feedback every step of the way.
Right. So our clear call to action for you, the listener, is definitely explore that initiative page on Drupal.org. Jump into those Slack channels if you use Slack.
Yeah.
Participate in the surveys or the RTCS. Share your perspective. It really does matter on this one.
Absolutely. Your voice is critical in helping shape whatever comes next.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on as you think about all this. Given all the complexities we've just discussed, the GPL rules, the diverse stakeholders with different motivations, the genuine fear of undermining open source values, the real need for funding infrastructure, what single factor do you believe is the absolute most critical element, the one thing that will ultimately determine whether this Drupal Marketplace initiative succeeds or fails?
Definitely something worth considering as this whole thing develops over the next few months.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. We'll catch you on the next one.
Okay, we're done. To close off this podcast, I just wanted to remind you that this brief was a fully AI-generated summary, and we take no credit for the original content. If you want to learn more, then check out the source. This podcast is produced by the team at Drupal Forge. Drupal Forge is the new #1 open-source development and hosting platform. It has all the functionality of the expensive platforms, but at very affordable prices. If you're looking for a new hosting provider, contact us for a demo before you get locked in. And if you like this podcast, hit subscribe, post a link on social media, and recommend it to 2 friends. That's it. See you next time. Bye for now.